Welcome in to Zion Media, another Key of No David podcast. But I am joined by Sir Lancelot, Lance Weaver, and Trevor the Key Keys. And we're going to be talking about some interesting things today. One of them is the apostasy. And we haven't talked a lot about the apostasy. And so this is going to be a lot of new information coming from Lance on the apostasy. But before we do, yesterday, when I woke up, I'd had a dream, and I came downstairs to my office and I wrote it down. And I would advise everybody out there, if you have something like that, a vision, a dream, or whatever, write it down. Be as detailed as you can, because sometimes you'll lose it. And I didn't want to lose it. So I came down, I wrote it down. I sent it to Lance. I sent it to Trevor because it was one of those where you ever have those dreams and it's like that nagging, like it's with you. It keeps, like you keep remembering this dream, and it felt so real. And that's what it was for me. So and I don't know, like, let me preface this. The night before I had this dream, I was talking to a couple of guys. I don't know, Lance, Trevor, if you guys have had this reoccurring dream. I know I've had this reoccurring dream that I'm back out on my mission.
Oh my gosh, I hate it more than any dream that I have. It is the sickest feeling.
So you've had the dream that you're like, I've had the dream that I'm back in high school. I've had the dream that I'm back on my mission. Lance, have you had those dreams?
Never a mission one, but tons of the school ones.
Never a mission one?
Never a mission one, not even.
I figured all of us had these things. I have it where I'm married, and I have it when I'm single, and I'm just like going out back on the mission, and I keep thinking to myself, like, you don't have to do this, because like when you're 19, I was like kind of having regrets, like going into it, and I didn't do it because of shame, and I'm thinking like, you can do it. People aren't, it's okay. You've already done a mission. And I just get this sick feeling, like the worst guilt feeling. I don't know, like guilt or whatever, but it is horrible. And I bet you I've had 20 of them.
So I was with a guy in my ward. His name's Ryan Shirley and Keith Coates. They were at my house. And Keith works for Trevor and I's sales company, and we were talking about the reoccurring. They had both been having these reoccurring dreams, and so I don't know if my dream is just because I was talking about it. And later on that night, I go to LDS Freedom Forum, and I kind of look to see what is anybody talking about. I go to LDS Freedom Forum to maybe get some ideas for podcasts, but for me, it's like to check the pulse of the fringe LDS. Like, that's why I go to LDS Freedom Forum. And sure enough, there's a title on there. Do you ever have the reoccurring dream of being on a mission? So I take a picture, screenshot of it, and I sent it over to Keith and Ryan. I'm like, yeah, this is crazy. We were just talking about this. And then that night, and I was kind of like in between sleep and wakefulness when this happened. And so it's one of those dreams that I knew it was going on. I was totally aware that it was going on in my mind, but I was just letting it play out. And so I wrote it down. I'm going to go ahead and read it. And I think there's some interesting things in there. And I just want to get your guys' thoughts, feedback. I know we talked about it over text because it's been on my mind, but I haven't had something like this vivid since like 2015, 2016. So it's been like 9 years since I've had something like this. It says, so last night I had a vivid dream. And I don't know the difference between a dream or a vision, but I'm going to call it a dream. I was in between sleep and wakefulness. I heard my name called. It said, Shane, 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 3 times. The person standing there was someone that I knew. And it's like, I know her, but it's like, I don't know her but I knew her. Like, I knew who this person was. And she said, the time is coming. In 2 years, the time is coming. Things are accelerating. Things are amplifying. I said, what is accelerating and amplifying? She said, the day when the missionaries get called home. I said, the LDS missionaries? She said, yes, but that's not all. They get called home as there is war and political unrest in 27. I said, the year 2027? She said, yes. In 27, all the missionaries will be called home, but a new missionary program will begin. I said, what is the new program? She said, just like in the early days of the church. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? She was so calm, but also urgent. She said, married men, ages 30 plus, will be called to leave their families. Some are called for 6 months, others a year, some more. They have been prepared for this. Many have had dreams about being called again or being on a mission again. I said, what about their wives and children? She said, don't worry, the church will awaken. They will use the funds they have been blessed with to take care of their wives and children. This is the start, she said. I said, the start of what? She said, 27 is the start of the LDS church being fully restored and living the final law. She said, wards and other families will be assigned to assist those whose fathers and husbands have been called to serve. She said, let's see, I can't even read my own handwriting. She said their first mission was a warm-up. They will be called to cry repentance. She said, let the sun going dark in the old world be the sign. She said, people must get ready for 34. I said, what is 34? She said, the sign in 34 means he has come. I said, who? She said, the world will know the prophecy of Malachi 3 and 4 will be complete and fulfilled. I said, what prophecy? She said, he is here. He is here. He is here 3 times. She said to let people know, it's time to let people know the time is here, that everyone should call upon the name of Christ and sanctify themselves, that the elders of the church will be called up and they must prepare for the work ahead. She then said, the warning trump is sounding again 3 times. She said, the warning trump is sounding 3 times. She then called me by name and said, Shane, go do the work now. I then came to. I felt energized, motivated, and inspired, and immediately went and wrote all of this down. It was so vivid. It was so clear. The woman had very silver hair, gray blue eyes, and looked to be around 40 years old, which was odd because of her silver hair. She was not an old woman, but it had the hair of an old woman. I believe I am not the only one that has had a reoccurring dream of being out on a mission. I haven't had an experience like this since 2016, about 9 years ago. I feel one of the reasons for the Zion Media platform must be to share experiences like this. And then I write, Joel 2:28 is here.
Okay, couple reactions that I got. Number one, so they're saying married, right? 30 years old and married.
That's what, yeah.
Okay, so you're hearing it right here. I'm not getting married until 2028.
No, I'm sure like people like you are like really available. Like, oh yeah, he's not even married.
Oh, if you're not married, you're even easier to get in.
I don't know.
Ugh. Okay.
No, you know what? Like go ahead, Trevor. Go ahead.
No, well, the other thing is if there's 50,000 married missionaries, and you said that the church is going to take care of them financially, if they needed $8,000 per month, it's only $4.8 billion a year. Well, in 2023, the church made $26 billion on their money market account.
So they could fund a program like this very easy.
They could fund 300,000 just with the interest, well, the capital gains that they're making on their account.
Yeah. I mean, I would do this in a second. I mean, I've told you that like on my mission.
Bring your mic again. We're having
Okay, yeah, I'll bring it a little closer. I remember on my mission I had this saying that I used to always say, right? I mean, because I was kind of like a sober missionary. I mean, my dad just died. I was not like, I don't know, I was a kid like everyone though. But I remember thinking like, and saying to people all the time, investigators, I'd be like, we know the church is true because if it wasn't, the missionaries would have destroyed it long ago.
Totally.
As my companions are like jumping cars, like literally jumping some of our cars in the air. Like we're just all a bunch of like little idiots. But I can remember as a missionary and coming home thinking like I would rather do this as an adult and feeling like, I want to be a missionary when I get, and my brother too. We like, this is a big thing. Like I would do that in a second, and I fully expected it since I was a missionary.
Well, I just think if I went on a mission now, I would be so much more effective. I have so much more experience. I have tasted the atonement. And I think I would be a much better missionary today than I was when I was young. But I don't know what that means exactly. I'm still, trying to process all of it. But somebody kind of broke it down and they're like, in 2027, there's a solar eclipse over in
Egypt.
Egypt area.
Yep.
And in 2034, there's another one. So
7 years apart.
So
here's a question I have. You know how we had Mike Rigby on and he talked about his dream where he saw like the destruction in Salt Lake City, right? And then on our chat in the comments, there were 40, I was watching all the comments. There were about 40 people that either said that they had it or their brother or their dad or their friend, right? And these things I think are like in like the collective consciousness, And I'm curious for people watching this, like, are other people having these dreams? Or anyone listening? Like, do you know of someone else that are having these dreams? I'd love your feedback.
So there's a video. It's not published right now. I have the link though, to another LDS podcast. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but I listened to bits and pieces of it. And there were people that were having dreams that the missionaries were going to be called home.
Is this a spiritual survival one? That hasn't been published yet?
It was published, but you can't find it unless you have the link.
Up. Should we show a little clip of it?
Yeah.
Have that one? That's the one you got?
I have that part like queued up right now.
Oh, whoops, sorry.
Let's just play like that little 2-minute clip.
Okay.
All right, because this is her like kid's dream, right? He's like.
But by the way, like I saw this on the little preview video, and I thought this was Taylor Swift until
kind of looks red-haired Taylor. All right, okay, we're gonna play this little thing. She's talking about her kid's dream.
And he was given a specific time frame, but I will not say the time. But I will let you know that we are entering the season thereof in which these things are going to be fulfilled. And that time will be the time of the eclipse happening on April 8th. So what he came to me with was he said, Mom, Jesus showed me that the missionaries are going to come home. And he said, he showed me first one of our nieces who is serving in Germany, that she got on a plane with all these other missionaries and she came home. And then I was shown my other niece who was serving in Minnesota, and she got on a plane as well and came home. But her plane was a little bit different, and she was on a smaller chartered plane, and she was sent to an airport in between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. And Benjamin was told that all of the missionaries are going to be coming home before this time where the Lord pours out his judgments. So I truly, when I received this from Benjamin, I knew with all my heart it was true, because you cannot deny when a child comes to you and starts speaking prophetically. And the scripture in Joel that of your old men will have dreams, your young men will have visions, and your sons and daughters will prophesy is true. And it is happening. And so when that happens, your spirit cannot deny what is coming out of the mouth of a babe.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. So the guy's channel, he pulled it off his channel, but somebody still had the link. So it's like in that, what do you call it, Trevor? When you it's still there, but it's
unlisted.
It's unlisted. So it's interesting. I just was watching that too, and I'm like, did the boy think the eclipse on the 8th was it, and did he just not understand the time?
In
Do
other
you know what I'm
words,
saying?
the 2027 one, you mean?
Exactly. And I didn't put together until I sent this to a couple people. They're like, hey, there's that eclipse in 2027. And I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe what everybody was thinking would be the 8th is actually, they just don't understand the timing of things. But my dream was, I heard 27 and I heard get ready for 34. And that's a 7-year period. That's another, and you think of the COVID, like somebody else pointed this out to me. They're like, COVID is a 7-year period. So from 2020 to 2027 is a 7-year period. And then maybe your tribulation, if people are like looking for a 7-year tribulation, maybe tribulation happens 2027 to 2034. I don't know.
Yeah,
But they're 7-year periods.
For whatever reason, and I don't have like great spiritual gifts, but I've had this 2027 thing in my head. Like basically it's good until 2027. And so, yeah, that's strange. And tribulation, I think going into, what we're seeing with Trump is as long as he gets in, I think we're going to be seeing some really, really good times. And it's almost like we're kicking the can down the road a little bit on, all of the bad stuff that is going to happen. But yeah, that's interesting. I would love if you're watching this, if you know other people that are having dreams, or not even like this dream itself, but other types of dreams that you think might be relevant. Let us know. Like this is interesting, and there's something happening right now. Shane and I were talking just yesterday, and we know quite not quite a few. We know a few people who are having like some demonic possession type experiences going on. And, I don't know if it's because all of a sudden we're in Zion Media and now we're in like the spiritual realm. And so we're in contact with
Just exposed to it more. Yeah.
But it appears to me that, my barometer is telling me that it's happening more and more. And I've always been fascinated in the scriptures when Jesus is talking to his disciples, he gives them 2 commands, right? And the first one is feed my sheep. And the second one is cast out demons, right? And that always was like weird to me. I'm like, geez, what's going on? Like, why is that the number 2 thing that Jesus tells his disciples several times? If you can count all of the gospels, like I think it's like 12 times that he's telling people cast out demons. And I've always thought, I'm like, well, good thing we don't have to really worry about that like en masse. Like it happens, but I have like this growing suspicion that as we start getting closer and closer to the return of Christ, that there's going to be a greater manifestation of evil that's being poured out, just as there is good and light. And yeah,
I want to just read Joel 2:28 because I get all these people that are like, they'll quote Amos 3:7. You guys are familiar with the Amos 3:7, right?
Yeah, the prophet.
Yeah.
Surely the Lord God will do nothing save he revealeth his secrets unto his servants, the prophets.
Yes.
So it's like everybody's like, well, if somebody has something, Amos 3:7 says this, but they forget that literally a few pages more in the Old Testament, you go to Amos chapter 2 or Joel 2:28, which by the way was also quoted from Moroni to Joseph Smith. It says, and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions.
Yeah, that's interesting. We think of the dreams and visions a lot, but we forget about the prophesy thing. Like you've got kids, you've got
you're going to have
don't
kids.
Have to be prophets. Like prophecy is going to be among everyone.
Yeah, and so we just have to remember what the scriptures actually say and not get so focused on, Amos 3 said. It says it will revealeth his secrets unto his servants, the prophets. Yeah. I mean, what does that mean exactly?
You saw that I sent you that Kim, what's his last name?
Kim Clement.
Kim Clement prophecy, like where he's full on, like 6 years ago, prophesied to a T that Hamas is like underground building fortresses and that they're going to try and take over Israel over Rosh Hashanah.
What?
That's bonkers.
in 2014.
I
Full
missed
on.
that.
Oh, dude, do you want me to show it to you?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do this one last because this actually goes into what I was going to talk about.
Interestingly enough,
apostasy.
we're doing a podcast after this about Kim Clement, aren't we, Shane?
Kim Clement, Brandon Briggs. Yeah. And I think we just, as Latter-day Saints, we can't be so close-minded to think that, was Samuel the Lamanite a prophet? Yes. And did they accept him as such? No, because he wasn't from wherever they were from. They didn't know who this guy was, and he wasn't the prophet at the time.
Well,
So
what about the guys from Persia, the wise men, who knew that Jesus was coming? And I mean,
Right.
there's plenty of, if you go into the Old Testament, there's all of these like seers and like people that like the prophets are even going to like ask questions to. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah. I wonder if we want to cut this into 2 different episodes, but this fits really well with what I'm talking about, the apostasy, because I think that we have like a myopic view sometimes in the church where we think we're the only ones like in heaven. Like we're God's only chosen people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like no one else can do anything, have any of the gifts of the Spirit, can prophesy, can have, anyway, we've got.
I blame South Park for that because of that episode of it was
the Mormons.
Exactly. Okay, let me share this because this thing is pretty wild. Okay, and the thing to remember, the reason why I sent it is not only does he prophesy this whole Hamas attack, then afterwards he says that there's going to be a messianic figure in Israel, right? Which is, if you've read my Book of Catherine thing, that's exactly what he is. Like when he comes on the scene, he is going to raise the dead. He's going to make people without legs walk. He's going to do miracles not seen since Jesus.
Right? How come we're not traveling out to meet this dude?
Oh, dude, I've been trying to find him, and
he's been laying low, dude.
Like I said, it was a voice, like a literal voice in my ear that led me to this thing way back in 2007, and I just kind of feel like when it's time, whatever, if I'm supposed to meet him, I can be led to meet him. I don't know though. I don't know what's gonna happen. All I know is like.
Well, I'm putting it out there right now, and I'm a powerful manifester, so we're coming to find you, Ben Catherine.
We'll do it together. Because I'm pretty sure that it's even in the prophecy, it says he is supposed to sit unpretentiously out of the public eye. He's probably like honestly lives in some monastery up in Lebanon or something. Who knows?
Yes. And for those of you watching, we've been doing the number things. If you hold the numbers 11, master number 11, master number 33, those are power manifester numbers. So if you have those numbers, you can speak things into existence. And Lance holds the master number 11. Trevor holds the master number 33. And I hold a master number 11. So just saying that could happen.
Yeah.
Let's watch this.
Okay, this is crazy. Here we go. I'm gonna continue.
Then you built yourself an underground Gaza, of which I have exposed. And your desire to have a final victory on Rosh Hashanah has been brought to nothing. Israel, a messianic prophet is about to speak to you again. Do not be afraid of the words which you hear. The words of blasphemy. For hear these words of mine. Thus says the Lord, by the multitude of my chariots, I have come up to the height of the mountains, and I will follow the tall trees, for I have dug and drunk waters, and with the soles of my feet, listen, with the soles of my feet, says the Lord, listen to me, I will dry up all the brooks of your enemy's defense.
Okay. All right. So this is pretty big, honestly, right? Because the Book of Catherine, it's just crazy. Like he is the messianic figure. He speaks in the name of the Lord. Like that's the blasphemy, right? He's going to speak in the name of the Lord, and just like Israel when Christ came, is going to be like blasphemy. How dare you speak in the name of the Lord, right? But he says that a war is coming. His prophecy will herald the coming war in the Middle East, and that war will then spill over to Europe. Right, and so it's like if the missionaries are supposed to be coming home from Europe and from Germany, like the kids' dream hat. It's like, what would make that happen? Well, it's exactly what the Book of Mormon prophesies, right? It says that the arm of the Lord will fall upon the nations of the Gentiles. And specifically, this is Nephi speaking after his vision of the Gentiles coming from Europe to America, right? And so how will the arm of the Lord fall upon the nations of the Gentiles? Well, he says that my people will be among them as a lion among the beasts of the forest, who if he goeth through will tread it down and tear it to pieces, and none shall deliver, right? And that is given 3 times. Like Christ quotes that twice in his teachings to the Nephites, and Nephi talks about it. This idea that the house of Israel, which is who? It's the Muslims. It's the Muslims. The Muslims are assaulted throughout Europe right now. And if a war breaks out between Israel and Islam, essentially, and you have all of these like very radicalized Muslim groups in Europe suddenly decide that they're going to all become terrorists and just going to raise hell and burn cities down, like you better believe, like overnight, Europe could be in a crap load of problems.
My wife believes that there's all these sleeper cells in big cities like New York.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our last one, we went through that, right? That CIA lady talked about it.
Yeah, my wife thinks that there's all these Islamic sleeper cells. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a big deal. Let's see, what is this chat GPT? Oh,
you're on mute, Trev.
I just asked ChatGPT to find Ben Catherine for me, and I think he did.
Yeah.
Okay, what you got?
So it says official website contact form. This site is dedicated to the Book of Ben Catherine, provides a contact form. You can submit your message here. And then check out how cool this is. Gathered in One. Monitor updates on dedicated websites like Gathered in One and the Book of Joachim Ben Catherine. But it says his name is, did you already know that? His name is...
Yeah, Chicanan.
Yeah.
Which is just the Hebrew for John.
But check that out. ChatGPT knows you know about him.
Well, I'm the only one who knows about him, right?
That's so weird. That doesn't make sense to me, Lance.
It is weird, right? It came up on this site. Like I said, the voice that came to me and told me, like, search for this thing. I searched for it. I went straight to this site. Most of the site was written in Hebrew. It was, I'm trying to remember what the site was even called.
Lance,
it was up for like 3 months and then it got taken down.
Would you mind, because I believe other people get these kind of promptings and they just kind of like, it's like a fly that's like bugging them. They're just like, and then they don't do it. Can you help people understand what that's like for you and then what you do about it? Because it appears that you're one of these people, and it's my personal belief that the Lord uses people who will listen. And when they find somebody that will listen, they're like, hey, we got one over here. And so they get more. And I want more people to listen, but can you just kind of walk through how it happens for you and then what you do about it?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say how I think if people want it to happen, this is what I did. And I think it's the best way to do it. Like because my dad had died right before, like a month before I left on my mission. And then when I got home, I'm just so interested in like this whole idea of like what happens after you die. So, I mean, I read so many texts, obviously I read all the standard works like multiple times. And then I got into OASP. So if you go to the text section of my website and Gathered in One, I mean, just go through all those. Go through the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, go through OASP, go through the Law of One. If you want to get into the Uranta Bible, just like if you're just like really wanting to seek information, obviously first ground yourself in our own religion, in Mormonism, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Like you got to be grounded in that before you can go out into the apocryphal stuff. And then once you start searching, like you will start getting like spirits come to you. And the Law of One teaches like the most interesting philosophy about this. And this is the secret, I think, honestly. Okay, so it talks about like, if you've heard the idea of the chakras, but you can call them whatever you want. You can call them just endocrine glands, but it talks about how you go up through these different levels of spirituality, right? And the most interesting one that it says is after activating like your heart, right? Having kind of your baptism of fire experience, which is like the equivalent to kind of the Hindu heart chakra activation. After that, the thing is understanding that you are a part of God, like your unity with God. And that also entails your unity with other people. Like once you really activate the idea that you are a part of God and God is a part of you, right? Just like Christ said that like he is the vine and you are the fruit and you live on him and you will dwell and have a fullness if you can like have him dwell through you. Like then suddenly you start to Like if you're like, oh, well, God's a part of me. Like I'm a part of God and God's a part of me. So then you start to like assign meaning to things in like a divine way, which people from the outside just see that as superstition. They'd be like, oh, well, you're like, whether it be numerology or whether it be seeing signs in animals and signs in the sunset and in the earth below and beneath, you know, all these things scriptures say. Like most people, when they see people assigning meaning to all these things in like some divine way, they just think, cuckoo, cuckoo, that's crazy. But once you realize that it's like, no, like there is a unity of God in me and throughout all creation, right? It's that idea of unity that makes it so it's like, no, but like the earth is part of God too. Like we're all part of God. And so how would I not notice that there's signs in the sky above and in the earth beneath? Like everything is a sign trying to point me to God and unity. And it's weird, like when you take that step, and I wish I say the exact wording that the Law of One says, but it's like, it has to do with activating like your upper chakras. Like as soon as you do that and you start to see meaning, like you start to like become a little superstitious and you start to see like angels and demons and things. And it's like a dangerous place because on one hand, if you go off the wrong direction, you're going to like just be crazy. You're going to be wacko and people are going to think you're crazy. Maybe you will be crazy. But on the other hand, that is actually the gateway into the magical realm, into the true priesthood, into God's power manifesting in your life, right? Like the prophets who can do miracles. Like it's the straight and narrow path, you know, the same type of path we learn about in the temple, and you have to not get pulled aside into these superstitions and false priesthoods and false magics. But like there really is like a path where you start to realize, well, if I have a voice inside me and I have to wonder, is that God or is that me? Well, the goal is to unify with God. The goal is to be one with God. And so you have to attune your voice to be God. And so the very first step of that is to assign that inner voice as God, right? That's a weird thing. But you have to like, and we start to do this naturally because we're like, well, is that the Spirit talking to me? Is that the Spirit of God talking to me, God's Spirit, or is that just my own voice? Well, the goal is to become one. The goal is that you are the same as God, that you are one with God. And so the very first baby steps toward that is to understand that inner voice is a part of God, even though it's you, and you're trying to align those until its fullness comes to you. Like it's kind of a strange thing, and there's just so many easy ways to get off base, and that's why I think in the scriptures and all these texts it's taught like just symbolically. I mean, because angels will come and teach it to you once you put your mind to wanting that. But then, don't go. You have to be careful because once you go that way, you have a lot of ways you can get messed up and pulled into dark paths.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, should we segue into apostasy now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Do you want me to pull up your screen here?
Share my screen here.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. And that was all pretty long. I don't know if we want to combine or split this into two videos or not. We'll have to decide. Okay, because I really want to hit this apostasy thing because this is a big deal. Okay?
Well, just so you know, every time we have you on, people are like,
I want more.
Why don't you guys go longer?
Okay, well, maybe they'll be cool with it being long. I'll try not to be too boring here, but I think people will like this because I am passionate about this.
The only thing that you need to work on is that mic keeps slipping, bro. And
I'm gonna try.
It gave David a breakdown because your mic was so bad, dude.
He couldn't edit, and now he's in the hospital.
Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta apologize to him.
Yeah, now your mic's perfect.
Okay. Hopefully this works. Okay, so today's episode. The second part 2 of today's episode is this idea. We need to redefine in the LDS Church, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we do not share, we need to redefine our view of apostasy. The Mormon apostasy, the Mormon version of apostasy did not happen. Okay?
Did you hear that?
Fighting words.
Yeah, those are some fighting words because
You're saying the Talmage, the great apostasy
didn't happen.
Come on.
Nope, didn't happen. Our view of the apostasy, I think, is a huge part of what makes a ton of people in the church go apostate. Our view of apostasy leads to apostasy.
So that's ironic.
Yeah, absolutely ironic. Okay, we have slaughtered the view of the apostasy, and this is basically, if you read my article, right, the apostasy was the apostasy of Israel. The only thing that went into apostasy was the house of Israel. Okay, the church did not go into apostasy. The house of Israel went into apostasy. The restoration of the gospel to Joseph Smith is the restoration of Israel. It is not the restoration of the church per se. So you can have the view that it's like, yeah, well, it kind of happened, but it's like we're taking a true concept and we are basically mixing it with the exact apostasy view that the reformers had. And that's the view that we hold. Like, our view of apostasy is the same view that John Knox and Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformationists held. We just adopted that because it kind of served as a good basis for our views of the restoration, but it is not the true apostasy taught in our scriptures. And I'm going to walk through the apostasy taught in our revealed scriptures. And it is not the same apostasy as we teach generally and believe in the church. Apostasy we believe in the church is a false apostasy taught by the reformers who wanted to make the Catholic Church wrong. They had to make the Catholic Church wrong in order to make themselves right? So Martin Luther, John Knox, Calvin, all of these reformers, in order for them to get their priesthood of all believers to work, they had to make the Catholic Church into the church of the devil. And that's a view that was held by McConkie, right, until he got set straight by Joseph Fielding Smith. So let me just go through.
Well, I'm going to throw this out here. I am 99% convinced against you, and I'm going to be open myself up, and I'm hoping viewers that are listening to this that are getting that same knee-jerk reaction, and I'm going to tell you at the end how far you moved my needle, right? I'm at 99. Awesome. I'm going to give you that 1% because you're Lance. You could be right, and let's see how far you move the needle.
That's exactly what I want. In fact, I talked to my wife about this morning, and she was like, I don't think no, the apostasy definitely happened. And I'm like, watch my podcast and then tell me what you think afterwards. So this is exactly what I want the audience to do, because I think that probably most of the people in the audience are the exact same. It is so deeply ingrained in us, this idea of universal apostasy, that we can't even consider something else being the truth.
Hey, okay? Do you want to know one reason that Lance has a master number? His wife is so much cuter than him. Like, incredibly. He master numbered that.
Oh man, yep. I tell you, and I'm sometimes just a horrible husband. I try, and we're so different. Yeah, and she is way cuter than me, and she's cooler than me in a lot of ways, and she's more on top of it, and she keeps me in line.
You earned her.
Oh, okay, well, let's get into this article. Can you make it bigger so we can see it?
Okay, yep. So let's grow this a little bit, and then I'm going to try to convince you and everyone else that the apostasy, that Israel is what apostatized. The house of Israel went into apostasy, not the church. And that the restoration of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the restoration of Israel. The restoration that we talk about is the restoration of Israel, not the restoration of the church per se.
Okay, I like that concept, actually.
Okay, so that's what I want to hit home. Our view of the apostasy, we need to reform it and realize, no, Israel went into apostasy, and it's being restored with Joseph Smith.
So in other words, you're hypothesizing that it wasn't that we're restoring what the Catholic Church put together. It's that Israel fell off the map and Joseph restored that apostasy.
Yeah. And what I want to hit into everyone's minds. So just let this sink in. This one saying here, okay? Because our view right now is that like the fullness of the gospel was restored with Jesus Christ. And then with the apostles, maybe sometime within the first 300 years, sometime before the Nicene Creed, the Catholic Church just like botched it. And they did something really wrong. And so basically God took his priesthood off the earth and he took his truth off the earth. And so the Middle Ages are basically this apostate Catholic Church that foundered in darkness without God's priesthood or divine overseership. And it was cast off, and basically people foundered in darkness for 2,000 years until Joseph Smith came to restore the gospel. Right? That's basically our view.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When God tried to give the fullness of the priesthood to Moses, right? He restored the fullness of the priesthood to Moses. And he came down to try to give it to the people of Israel, right? And they wouldn't have it, right? They were building a golden calf. And so he took the fullness of his priesthood away, but he left with them a lower priesthood, right? And this is all laid out in D&C 88 pretty clearly. We'll go through the actual scripture. And he left that priesthood with them for 1,500 years. From the time of Moses to the time of Christ, they had the Aaronic priesthood. And they were messed up. But let me ask you, were they in apostasy? Was there a great apostasy between Moses and Christ? Was the house of Israel, which was his church, from Moses to Christ, in apostasy? Like, we don't really hold that view. We think, no, they had the priesthood. Yeah. They had prophets. They were They were God's chosen vehicle to bring the truth to the earth.
Yeah, we got prophets, I mean, all the way up to the time of Christ, right? I mean,
Right.
40, 50 years before is the last scripture, right? In the
And
Old Testament.
I am proposing that the exact same thing happened in the times of the Gentiles. We have the times of Israel and the times of the Gentiles, and that the two had an exact timeline that matched them both. Both of them received the fullness of the priesthood at the very beginning. Both of them rejected the fullness of the priesthood and were given a lesser priesthood, but that lesser priesthood continued. And both of them were wicked as hell. Both of them were horrible. Like Israel is like worshiping Baal, according to, what is it, Ezekiel or Jeremiah, in the temple. Like they were so wicked that God had to destroy them, destroy the temple on 2 different occasions. Like they're just doing all sorts of horrible things. From
Weird stuff.
From David and his polygamy and his conquering and killing
Weird
hundreds
stuff.
of thousands of people, to their Baal worship, to the northern king, to the split of the 2 kingdoms. They were horrible people. But God did not reject them until they rejected the Son of God, until the end of their times, the fullness of their times. When Christ came, that's when God rejected them, and that's when they went into apostasy. Okay? And the same thing is and did happen to the Catholic Church. So let me go through this. Let me lay a foundation. The first step I'm going to do really quick is just let's go through a few of the repercussions of our view of the apostasy. Okay? Now, our view of the apostasy, like I said, our view of the apostasy causes apostasy because it creates such a weak and pathetic God. Okay? Because in our view of the apostasy, like you have to ask yourself, well, why the heck, if the gospel is important at all, like if it even matters, why on earth would God like restore it to Peter, James, and John, and Paul, and have it spread to the ends of the earth, only to let it be like go apostate within like a couple hundred years, and then be taken from the earth for 2,000 years? Like what the hell? And I know I'm using this religiously charged language because it's like Christ said, the gates of hell will not prevail against thee. Upon you, Peter, I will found my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. But our view is that the gates of hell prevailed against it.
Wow.
Just like 100 or 200 years after.
I didn't think of that.
Like we made Christ a liar. And then not only
Yeah,
that, it's
totally.
like, what do we got? Because if he could go and call Joseph Smith in the 1800s.
Trevor, did you pick that up?
No.
It's like, okay, Matthew says, thou art Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Sorry, I just lost it. Where'd it go? Oh, on this rock I can't see it. Can you blow it up again?
Yeah.
Let's see, which one is it? Here,
right here. So it's like, didn't he say to Peter, thou art Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it? And so by us saying that, no, it did go into apostasy, then we're making Christ a liar.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm just going to go through 2 or 3 scriptures really quick, and then we're going to come back to them. Because once again, we're just not reading our scriptures. God revealed all this to us. He laid it out.
Trust me.
Instead of,
it's the most frustrating thing. Like, you can tell Trevor, I have these like meetings, and I'm just like, what does it say? What does the scripture say? Like, why don't we just read what the words say and take them for what the words say? Instead, we want to go on these like tangents and try to make them say something different than what they say. And you bring up a really great point just in that scripture alone.
Yeah, there's a bunch more. Okay, just wait. And like I say, suspend judgment a little bit, because by the time we get through all the scriptures that prove my point, I think that people will be on board.
I'm at 3% now.
Okay, so check this out. First of all, let me just go through the fallacies. Okay, so first of all, my whole question, why would God reject the Catholic Church, right? When you can read through history and you find out that they had problems, but Israel had the exact same problems, if not worse, from the time of Moses to the time of Christ. Why would God reject the Catholic Church and yet not reject Israel? Israel had the same secession breaches. Like our church has had the same secession problems that the Catholic Church has had. Why would he take away the priesthood from the Catholic Church, the lesser priesthood anyway, from them and not from Israel, or not from us for our problems? Like if you believe our version of apostasy, it causes apostasy because you're like, oh well, I'm gonna get through read history and I read about their problems and be like, oh god, the Mormon Church had those exact same problems, like between Joseph Smith and Brigham and all the controversy and the problems and polygamy and this and that. Like people are gonna be like, well, this whole time I've demonized the Catholic Church and thought they're the church of the devil because they had these problems, and now I find out our church had the same thing. It's like, well, that's not how God works. He is so long suffering. His church, which was Israel, had tons of problems, but he did not take away his priesthood. right? He kept the lesser priesthood with them, and it's the same with the Catholic Church, and it's the same with our church.
Until they rejected him.
Right, until they rejected him, until the fullness of their times. I will prove this by the scriptures. So let's go through this.
Let's go. Let's keep going.
Okay, 2, right? If priesthood is so important, why did God wait 2,000 years to restore the church? He could have led some group of saints into the middle of Siberia and restored his church there the same way that he led the saints into Utah, right? Like the gates of hell tried to kill Mormonism. And so what did God do? He led us way out into the middle of nowhere where there was no one to molest us. Because a lot of times our argument is like, well, God couldn't. I remember even using this. As a missionary, I said this the same stuff, and it's like, it didn't make sense then, and it doesn't make sense now. Like people be like, well, why didn't God restore the church like in the Middle Ages? And it's like, no, because the world was too wicked. They wouldn't let it happen. And it's like, wait, what? So the devil is more powerful than Christ? Like he couldn't lead a group of people out in the middle of nowhere and restore the church the same way he did with our church? That makes no sense. He couldn't restore the church because the world was too wicked? What? That makes no sense. But yet we say this and we believe it, and it's like, it's bonkers. Okay, let's keep on going again. So here's the Peter thing. Thou art Peter. On this rock I'll build my church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. So why did the gates of hell prevail against it within a few hundred years? We make God a liar. It's like, come on, guys. Anyway, I'm going to prove by our scriptures that the gates of hell did not prevail against it. All right, suggesting that the Catholic Church, which is the largest and most influential globally civilizing church that the world has ever known, was completely rejected by God because of its numerous issues and evils, right? Or in fact, is the church of the devil, as some have suggested, requires the logical thinker to draw the same conclusions about the Israelite nation and also modern Mormonism. That's a huge one. Like as I'm telling my kids, because my kids, everyone probably has the same thing. My kids have had like real objections, being like, why should I go to church? And why do you think this church is true? And it does sound bonkers when you're like, yeah, we are less than 1% of the world's population, but we have the full truth and everyone else is wrong. Like it's so much more self-evident and obvious when you're like, no, don't you see what's happened here? Like God is converting the entire world to his gospel. And he started with one man, Abraham, and it spread to a nation. And then he got Moses and he restored what had become apostate, right? And then that group of Israel became one of the most powerful forces in the Middle East, in the modern world of ancient times. And then when they were so wicked, he took his gospel to the Gentiles of Europe and he made them the most powerful country in the entire world. Like, do you not see his hand at play in human history? How can you deny God's hand in human history when you study the fact that Christianity has covered the entire earth? Like that is such a better narrative and so much more self-evident than our current narrative, which we just got from the Protestants, which is like, yeah, God tried and he kept failing at civilizing the world and covering the world with truth. And it just barely started to happen again with Joe Smith, but didn't really work.
What else we got?
Okay, next one. So, I mean, I've hit that point enough. Let's get to the scriptures. Let's go to the scriptures that actually teach what I'm saying. Okay, so first one actually as a precursor is the human history I was talking about. If you look at human history, the history of the church from the time of Christ to present has mirrored the history of Israel from the time of Abraham to the time of Christ. Like those 2,000-year timelines, the exact same things happen. And when you see this pattern, then it's like, holy cow, God's hand, how could this be coincidence? Like this can't just be self-fulfilling prophecy. God's hand must be on this. Like, do you notice that the Catholic Church split into two, like into the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic Church on this timeline, the exact same time that the house of Israel and the house of Judah split? Like, do you notice that the colonization of the world in modern times happened the exact same time as the colonization from the Middle East of the Nephites coming to America? Like they both came to America at the same time. Does that make sense? Get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, do you see that like Martin Luther's reforms match the reforms of Ezra? And this is something the Book of Catherine totally hits on. This is where this actually came to me, right? Like, do you notice that Alma restores the church in the New World the same time that Joseph Smith restores the church in America? Like Alma and Joseph Smith are on a parallel. Like, in fact, they start the same way. You have Abraham starting with his 12 tribes. You have the Christ starting with the 12 apostles.
How do you have any time in your life? I cannot believe you made all of this.
I mean, I have so mumuch stuff on my site. Holy cow. Like I say, this just come to me in these huge like downloads in the night.
So you're, as you were going on, I was thinking of something else, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Lance has gone in and mapped out the timeline of formation and apostasy of all of these different things. And so you're saying as you're lining these things up, because this came to you, you're like, holy crap, this happened at the same time. And it's not the same time, but it's the same time.
Exactly. It's the same point on the timeline. It's like he's using the same template. He's given us a pattern. It says that in the Doctrine and Covenants. God gives us a pattern on all things that we be not deceived. He's used the same pattern in both these ages, which the Book of Catherine is what like first lays this out, that the times of the Israel have repeated in the times of the Gentiles. Right? Even the crazy things like Saul was crowned king by Samuel, right? We all know how that went on, that Saul gets crowned and then David after him. Well, Charlemagne gets crowned king by the Pope and creates the Holy Roman Empire. And it's crazy because I've studied history so much. As you study history and you're like start comparing like Charlemagne to David and how one of them spreads his religion through the Middle East and the other one spreads this religion into Europe and basically Christianizes all of the heathen tribes, the Germanic tribes. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. And there's so much history in the medieval times that now I can like reach back in the old ones and be like, oh, that's probably exactly how it went down. Right? Even like the Exodus and them going into Egypt, like the church, it follows the exact same, like there is something called, this one blew my mind because I'm like, well, is there a correlation to the Babylonian captivity? Because we know that Israel gets sacked by Babylon and taken into Babylon and has a 70-year, and it ends up being somewhere between 70 and 100 years, 120 years, depending on how you want to do the beginnings and end. But they go in at the time of Daniel and they come back at the time of Israel. Well, there is something called the Babylonian captivity of the church, where the same thing happens to the Catholic Church.
By who?
The Catholic Church gets sacked by the French. The Avignon papacy, the French sack Rome, they take the Pope and they take him to France. If you just look at Babylonian captivity of the church, you'll see there's like this 70-year period where there is no church in Rome. It gets taken to France. So that's like their Babylon.
That's actually pretty baller. Can you imagine if somebody came in and took the prophet?
For real.
That is crazy. Like a coup d'etat type thing. Yeah. Imagine someone doing that. That's insane. And
there ends up being kind of like a battle between France and Italy ever since, in the same way that there's kind of like this battle between the Jews in Jerusalem and the Jews in Iraq ever after that. And the same thing happens where you've got like the Exodus and they go to Egypt for 150 years. The church, after being founded in Rome, ends up getting taken to Constantinople and being kind of bound in Constantinople until it gets liberated and brought back to Rome again. Like it's really wild when you see, especially when you think of like the split of the northern and southern tribes of Israel versus the split of the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic.
It's like you can see the code, and if you can see the code, if you can see the past code, you might be able to predict the future code.
You know what it reminds me of? I mean, this is kind of like, cause and effect. Like maybe this is just how long it takes Satan to crack and corrupt. It's like the exact same time, and then we have to like counter move.
Yeah, I mean, some people say history doesn't repeat; it rhymes. But I say, history pretty much repeats. It pretty much repeats.
That's
why. And God is like using this repetition. And once you see it, then you're like, well, God, I see God's hand in this. How can we say that God had no hand? That this was like a total apostasy when I see God's hand in all of this, right? Okay, so let's go into the actual scriptures that are pretty powerful. This is one that I want people to really think about. Okay, so first of all, let's think about this idea here that I already kind of touched on, right? That when Moses came and Israel was so wicked, right? It says that he took Moses out of their midst and the holy priesthood also, but the lesser priesthood continued, which priesthood holdeth the keys of the ministering of angels and the preparatory gospel, which gospel is the law of carnal commandments, right? So Israel lost the higher priesthood because of their wickedness at the time of Moses, right? So I suggest that about the same time on that timeline, the same thing happened with the time of the Gentiles. The higher priesthood, so it's like the Catholic Church, they lost the higher priesthood the same way that the house of Israel lost the higher priesthood. But the lesser priesthood continued, right? And how do we know that? Because our Doctrine and Covenants say so.
A guiding force, the keeper's flame, unlocks the doors, reshapes the frame. Wisdom flows like endless streams, a heart aligned with higher dreams. Guardian of light, bold and true, a steady hand to lead us through. Building bridges, breaking chains, infinite power flows through their veins. Keeper of the keys, unlocking dreams, a light that shines, eternal beings with a dragon's roar. Courage builds the strongest core. Passion drives each move they make, turning shadows into daybreak. With intuition sharp and clear, they walk the path without fear. Infinite wisdom lights the way, a cosmic dance through night and day. Keeper of the keys, unlocking dreams, a light that shines, eternal beams. With cosmic truth and vision wide, the stars align, they're by your side. Through the fire, through the storm, a bold protector, a leader born. Mystical insight guides their way, transforming night into day. Keeper of the keys, unlocking dreams, a light that shines, eternal beams. With cosmic truth and vision wide, the stars align, they're by your side. A guardian bold, with wisdom bright, infinite power, endless light. Through their touch, the world will see the strength and grace of eternity. Through the fire, through the storm, a bold protector, a leader born. Mystical insight guides the way, transforming night into day. Through the fire, through the storm, a bold protector, a leader born. Mystical insight guides the way, transforming night into day.